Hello, I'm Ron Squire. Welcome to highlights of the 2026 Formula SimRacing World Championship. Round 7 is the Belgian Grand Prix at the legendary Spa-Francorchamps. A favourite for the drivers and motorsport enthusiasts alike, the Belgian Grand Prix is one of the oldest and longest on the calendar, boasting over 7 kilometres in length, and with notable corners such as Eau Rouge, Les Combes, Pouhon and Blanchimont, Spa requires a speedy setup to cope with over 44 laps. Qualifying for this race saw the lowest attendance figures since last year's Singapore Grand Prix, with only 12 participants in the race. ALMMV lock out the front row for the first time since Japan, with Alex Ahu on pole followed by the returning Jan Grankvist. The Finn just missed out on the top spot by 0.004 of a second. Mark Schluter takes third, the world champion holds off Loic Mounier by 0.3. Optimally lock out the third row with Braxol leading in front of Murnau, with Peter Burlak also back since Canada to take 7th, as both Invictus drivers Marza and Tucson sandwiched Zolk Zooks in the optimal hosting to round out the top 10, with both 7 arrows starting in 11th and 12th as Zaba Elex replaces Will Snowden for this race. To the race start, Lehoux gets a lightning getaway off the line whilst Grankvist struggles going into last source as the Finn nearly loses second to the world champion, whilst the Invictus and 7 Arrows drivers intermingle at the back. Further up the road, Zolk Zooks goes wide at Brussels but was lucky not to make contact or lose any position in the process. Murnau makes a great run up on Burlak exiting Blanchimont and executes the move on the outside of the bus stop chicane to move up into 7th. So at the end of the opening lap, Lehoux leads from Grankvist, Schluter, Mounier, Braxok, Zooks, Murnau, Burlak, Marza and Suisi. Despite unloading massive amounts of pressure on Grankvist, Schluter can't seem to find a way past the Finn in the opening laps of the Grand Prix. But behind, Murnau continues to go up the field, making an easy pass on Zooks down the Kemmel Straight for 6 on lap 3. Lap 6 and the lead changes as Lehoux and Grankvist essentially swap positions just down the Kemmel Straight, whilst further back Nando Marza is showing a great turn of pace, the Hungarian making a decent move on Zolk Zooks for 8th as the Hungarian's afternoon gets from bad to worse. As for 7 Arrows, their afternoon doesn't even get off the ground, especially if your name is Zaba Elex, the Hungarian once again retiring by spinning off and crashing out at Stavlo. Once again the Hungarian registers no points in the World Championship race. 10 laps into the race and Grankvist leads as he pulls away from the pack. Lehoux is now the one under pressure from Schluter as the German ramps up the pressure on the championship leader. Loic Mounier keeps an eye from behind in 4th, but both optimales of Braxok and Murnau keep each other company in 5th and 6th. Burlak tries to keep up in 7th as the Croatian relaxes with significant time between himself and Marza. Zooks seems to have a troubling race in 8th, while Suisi holds up honours for 7 Arrows in 10th. Suisi himself is the first to stop on lap 11, fitting on hards as the Tunisian rejoins in 11th with some gap to Tucson. Murnau is the next one to come in from the midfield as he surrenders 6 to Burlak, the Brazilian back out in 10th with a fresh set of mediums. Lap 14 and Mounier starts to lose some pace as he gets overtaken by Braxok down the Kemmel Straight. The Frenchman pits at the end of the lap for a fresh set of hards as Mounier rejoins just in front of Tucson. Both Invictus drivers pit in together on lap 16 as 2 essentially swap compounds, Marza on the hards and Tucson on the mediums. Whilst Marza was able to just get out in front of Suisi, Tucson suffered in his stop and rejoins at the back with some gap to the Tunisian. Braxok is the first of the leaders to pit from 4th on lap 17, the Optimale driver pitted on hards as he rejoins a couple of seconds behind Mounier. The leader himself, Grankvist, makes his stop on the next lap as Lehoux assumes the lead as Schluter doesn't take his eye off the ball. The Finn fitting on hards as he rejoins in 7th, but with no Grankvist, Lehoux is completely vulnerable as on lap 19, Mark Schluter makes his move on the championship leader down the Kemmel Straight, taking the lead for the first time in the race. But once again there's a false dawn as Schluter pits at the end of the lap with Lehoux back out in front. The world champion with a new set of hards as the ground effect driver comes back out in 7th, just a second behind Grankvist. Whilst just in front, Mounier, now with his fresh tyres breaking in, pushes up the field with a great overtake on Braxok for 5th, the Frenchman with his mojo back. Lehoux makes his stop on lap 21 as Burlak leads for the first time in the race. Lehoux fits on hards, but the undercut did not work as he loses out to both Grankvist and Schluter coming out of pit lane. The championship leader in 7th, with Schluter the stronger of the would-be leaders as he overtakes Grankvist for 5th. On the same lap, the race would end for Zooks as the optimal hosting driver loses the back end midway through Pouhon, spinning out and slamming into the barrier, marking retirement number 2 in Belgium. At halfway distance, Burlak leads the race for now, with a near 7-second gap just in front of Murnau. Braxok in 3rd, but can barely contain Mounier from behind. Schluter saying a great turn of pace over the 2 ALMMV drivers in 5th, as both Grankvist and Lehoux can only watch. Marza is seemingly relaxed in 8th, over 7 seconds from Suisi, whilst Tucson keeps tabs on the Tunisian in 10th. With the majority of the field on hards, the only ones on mediums halfway through is Lucas Murdo in 2nd and Matt Toussaint in 9th. With the hards starting to break in soon, both Murdo and Toussaint look to be pitting twice rather than just once for those on the hards. For Murdo, that stop will be coming early as lap 26, as the Brazilian surrenders 2nd to fit on hards for the first time in the race. Murdo rejoins in 7th, less than 13 seconds from Lehoux. Burlak is the next to pit in for the lead on lap 28 as the Croatian switches to mediums. The MV Conquest driver rejoins just behind Murdo in 7th. On the same lap, Schluter continues to make some advancements up the field, passing Mounier for 2nd up to Lecombe and chasing down Braxock for the lead. Mounier continues to slide down the field on lap 29 with Grankvist overtaking the Frenchman exiting out on Radion. They fin back on the podium for now. It would take Schluter 2 laps before he makes his move on Braxock, and he does so just down the Kemmel Straight, outbaking the Hungarian into Lecombe, the world champion back out in front. It gets from bad to worse for Mounier just 1 lap later, as Lehoux finally breaks free past the Frenchman on the outside down the Kemmel Straight for 4th, making this straight the best place for overtaking on the calendar. The back two make their stops on the same lap as both Toussaint and Suisi go in for fresh rubber. Toussaint remains in front and on the mediums, while Suisi switches compound just behind. Lap 32 and both Lehoux and Grankvist once again switch positions to increase the Frenchman's point score in the championship, and on the next lap the Frenchman makes a similar move on Braxock for 2nd as the pressure on the world champion begins. So as we approach the last 10 laps, Schluter still leads the race, but now in a very rare and precarious situation of sacrificial lamb to Lehoux, who's been on a comeback charge since his stop. Braxock was in 3rd but could barely contain Grankvist as the two swap places down the Kemmel Straight. Mounier within a few seconds of the leading quartet but can't mount any serious challenge. Murdo and Burlak are odds for 6. Marza was nearly 20 seconds in front of Toussaint just before his final stop, while Suisi is still ensuring that 10 cars finish the race. Mounier makes a rare stop on lap 35 to fit on softs to try and turn up the pace for the MV Conquest driver. The Frenchman rejoins in 7th, just 11 seconds from Murdo. Back at the front of Lehoux seemingly turning up the wick on Schluter and makes his move on the world champion on lap 37 down the Kemmel Straight as the Frenchman retakes the lead, but with Schluter able to keep up the pace and with a great amount of slipstreaming, the world champion retakes the lead on the next lap at the very same place. But for Lehoux, sadly, he isn't able to catch up fully, and despite slowly closing the gap in the last few laps of the race, it isn't enough, and Schluter holds his ground all the way to the finish line. Taking his 2nd win of the season, Mark Schluter just edges it across the line in a brilliant display from the world champion. Alex Lehoux can't take the lead as a result and has to settle for 2nd, and Jan Grankvist showing he still has the pace, finishing 3rd. Peter Burlak and Loic Mounier proper points for MV Conquest as they take 4th and 5th on the last lap. Passing Braxock in the process, the Hungarian has 2nd with 6. Whilst Murdo takes 7th, Marza and Toussaint take vital points for Invictus in 8th and 9th, while Suisi finishes in the top 10 for the 3rd race in a row. In the driver's table, Lehoux still leads the way, but with Schluter slowly closing in as the battle for the title heats up, the gap just at 15 points. Braxock is 1 point ahead of Grankvist following the Finns' podium finish, with Mounier still in 5th on 99 points, just 14 from Burlak. Marza in 7th on 46 points, whilst Murdo overtakes Pascal for 8th as the Italian shares 9th with Toussaint. In the Constructors, the battle for the title is virtually still on for the top 3 as the places remain unchanged. The gap between ALMMV and MV Conquest slightly increased as the ground effects slowly close in. Optimally in 4th, just 44 points from Invictus, and 7 Arrows took advantage of the absence of Squire Nation Esports from Belgium to increase their points difference to 19. The next race is the Italian Grand Prix at Monza on Sunday the 2nd of August. You can watch that race live as it happens right here on our YouTube channel. Qualifying begins at 8:25 PM GMT, with the race starting at 8:45 PM GMT. In the meantime, you can join our forums at formula-simracing.net, as well as our Discord server for up-to-date information and joining on our community. The links are in the description below, and you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram and TikTok. We hope you enjoyed today's presentation. I'm Ron Squire, and join us for the next round of the 2026 Formula Sim Racing World Championship.